A soldier who has fought through the longest, darkest battle of their life does not walk off the battlefield the same way they walked onto it. They are marked. They are changed. They carry something in their eyes that only those who have truly suffered can recognize. There is a weight in their step that tells the story of every night they almost gave up, every wound they had to bandage in the dark, every moment they stood alone on the field and wondered if anyone even knew they were still fighting. And that is exactly who you are today. You are not sitting here by accident. You did not stumble into this moment by chance or coincidence. Heaven paused whatever was competing for your attention and drew you here, to this message, to this word, because there is something you need to hear that your soul has been waiting for longer than you realize. You are a soldier. You have been on a battlefield most people cannot even see. And though your wounds may not show on the outside, you know what it cost you to still be standing right. Beloved chosen one, you have carried more than your shoulders were ever meant to carry alone. You have walked through seasons so dark that you stopped being able to tell the difference between night and morning. You have prayed prayers that felt like they hit the ceiling and came right back down. You have cried tears in silence that no one saw, no one counted, and no one acknowledged. You have been misunderstood by people who should have known you better. You have been overlooked by rooms you gave everything to enter. You have been underestimated, dismissed, and at times made to feel like something was deeply wrong with you, simply because you did not fit the mold everyone else seemed so comfortable wearing. But here is what I need you to understand right now, in this very moment, as your eyes move across these words and something deep inside you begins to stir. Nothing that happened to you was a mistake, not the rejection, not the loss, not the long silence from heaven when you screamed for an answer, not the relationships that crumbled, not the dreams that seemed to die before they ever had a chance to breathe. None of it was random. None of it was punishment. None of it meant you were forgotten. It meant you were being formed. There is a particular kind of soldier that heaven produces, and that soldier does not come from a comfortable, undisturbed life. The soldier heaven trusts with the greatest assignments is the one who has been tested in the deepest fires, who has stood at the edge of complete collapse, and somehow, by the grace of something greater than themselves, did not fall. That soldier is you. You are that soldier. And the fact that you are still here, still breathing, still seeking, still reaching for something more is the clearest sign that the assignment on your life is not finished. It has barely even begun. You have to stop measuring your life by the standards of people who were never called to walk your path. You were not built for an ordinary existence. The very struggles that made you question your worth were the exact curriculum heaven designed to awaken the warrior inside you. You cannot produce deep water faith from a shallow water life. The depth of what God is about to pour through, you required a depth of preparation that looked, from the outside, like devastation. But from heaven's perspective, it was graduation. Think about the soldier walking off that battlefield, worn, scarred, exhausted to the marrow, but alive. And not just alive in body, alive in understanding, alive in wisdom, alive in a kind of unshakable knowing that cannot be taught in any classroom or inherited from any comfortable upbringing. That knowing was bought with suffering. It was forged in fire. It was sealed by every single moment they chose to keep going, when every rational voice told them to quit. That is your testimony. That is your armor. That is the very thing that makes you dangerous to darkness and powerful in the hands of God. You carry a light that most people cannot generate because most people were never willing to go where you have been. And that light is not something you manufactured. It was placed inside you before you ever took your first breath. Before your name was spoken aloud by a human voice, it was written in heaven. Before your parents held you, heaven already knew the weight of what you were built to carry and the magnitude of what you were built to release. You are not like the rest. You were never meant to blend in. You were never meant to settle for the edges of existence while the fullness of your calling waited patiently for you to wake up and step into it. And right now, in this moment, something is waking up inside you. You may feel it as a stirring. You may feel it as a quiet fire in your chest. You may feel it as a sudden, inexplicable certainty that this message is not for someone else. It is for you. It was always for you. So, chosen one, before we go any deeper into what heaven has placed on your life, before we begin to unpack the truth of who you really are and why your spirit is far stronger than you have ever been allowed to realize, I want you to do one thing. Confirm that you received this message. Type the number 777 in the comments right now. 777. Let heaven and this community witness your declaration that you are here, you are ready, and you are stepping into the truth of your identity. And if this opening has already touched something in you that has been waiting a long time to be touched, do not keep this to yourself. Share this message with someone who is still on that battlefield, someone who has not yet heard that their suffering has a purpose, that their fight has a reason, and that they are not forgotten. Like this video. Subscribe if you have not already done so, because what is coming in this message is going to go deeper than anything you have heard before. You are here because heaven sent you here, and heaven does not waste a delivery. Let us continue. You did not arrive at this point in your life without evidence. There are marks on you, not the kind the world can see, not the kind that show up in photographs or in the way you dress or in the carefully constructed version of yourself that you present to rooms full of people who do not truly know you. These marks are deeper than that. They live in the places where you were broken and rebuilt, in the memories that still surface without warning at 2 in the morning, in the way your chest tightens when a certain kind of music plays and you cannot explain why, in the involuntary tears that come not from sadness exactly, but from a deep and wordless recognition of something your spirit knows that your mind has not yet fully translated. These are the marks of the chosen, and every single one of them was placed on you with intention. There is a pattern in the lives of every man and woman throughout history who was set apart for something extraordinary, and that pattern is not one of smooth roads and easy victories. It is one of fire. It is one of long nights and confusing silences and seasons where everything that could be stripped away was stripped away until what remained was only what was unbreakable. Look at the life of Joseph, whose own brothers threw him into a pit and sold him into slavery. Look at how he sat in an Egyptian prison for years, forgotten by the very man he helped, left in darkness so long that any reasonable person would have concluded that God had abandoned the story. But heaven never abandoned the story. Heaven was authoring it. Every year in that prison was a semester in a school that no palace could have provided. Every chain on Joseph's wrists was shaping the very hands that would one day distribute bread to a starving world. That is the blueprint, and you are living it. The wounds you carry are not evidence that heaven looked away. They are evidence that heaven was present enough, trusted you enough, and valued the assignment on your life enough to allow the deepest kind of preparation. Because here is the truth that religion sometimes softens, but the Spirit of God makes plain. There are things you cannot learn in comfort. There are dimensions of compassion, of authority, of wisdom, of unshakable faith that simply cannot be developed in a life without pressure. The diamond does not apologize for the crushing it endured. The diamond understands that without that crushing, it would still be coal. You were never meant to stay coal. Think about every season of rejection you have walked through, every door that closed in your face, every opportunity that evaporated before you could grasp it, every person who chose someone else, every room that did not make space for you, every time you brought your best and it was met with indifference or dismissal. In those moments, it felt like failure. It felt like proof that you were not enough, that you were somehow defective, that the life you hoped for was reserved for others, and not for you. A chosen one, what you interpreted as rejection was actually redirection. What felt like a door slamming shut was heaven quietly, firmly steering you away from a destination that would have contained you, limited you, and ultimately prevented you from reaching what you were actually built for. Every no you received was protecting a yes that is so much bigger than you currently have the capacity to imagine. And then there were the relationships. The people you loved who did not stay. The friendships that dissolved without explanation. The family members who should have been your strongest support and instead became your deepest source of confusion and pain. The partners who left. The mentors who failed you. The communities that could not hold the weight of who you were becoming. You mourned those losses. Some of them you are still mourning. And that mourning is valid and real and does not need to be rushed or minimized. But there is another layer of truth beneath the grief, and it is this. Those departures were not accidents, they were appointments. Heaven was not punishing you by removing people from your life. Heaven was protecting your assignment by ensuring that the company you kept matched the calling you carried. You cannot carry a divine assignment while being anchored to people who are not assigned to your next season. The loneliness that followed those losses was one of the hardest things you have ever endured. There is a particular ache that comes from being surrounded by people and still feeling profoundly alone. From being in a room full of voices and hearing none of them speaking to the deepest part of who you are. That ache is not a sign that something is wrong with your capacity for connection. It is a sign that you are wired for a depth of communion that ordinary companionship cannot satisfy. You were made for divine relationship, not just human relationship. You were made for conversations that reach into the eternal, not just the temporary. And the loneliness you felt was not emptiness. It was space. Space that heaven was clearing, hollowing out, making room for something, and someone's presence would finally match the frequency of your spirit. Every sleepless night was a watch. Every tear you cried in private was a prayer your mouth never had to form. Every moment you sat in the rubble of something you had built and watched it crumble was a moment. Heaven was saying, not this, not yet, not here, because I have something that will not crumble. And consider the seasons of silence. Those stretches of time when you prayed and nothing seemed to answer. When you sought direction and heard nothing. When you stood at a crossroads and looked in every direction and saw only fog. Those silences were not abandonment, they were incubation. The seed did not hear the sun while it is underground. The seed cannot yet perceive the light it is growing toward. But the silence and the darkness and the pressure of the soil are precisely the conditions required to push that seed upward toward its purpose. You were underground, chosen one. And what was happening in that silence was not absence. It was growth of the most foundational kind. The kind that happens in the root system before anything visible ever appears above the surface. The depth of your root system now is extraordinary. You have been through things that should have uprooted you entirely, and you are still planted. still standing, still anchored in something that the storms of your life could shake but could never fully dislodge. That anchorage is not your own strength. You need to understand that clearly. It is the hand of God holding what you could not hold yourself. It is grace operating in the background of your suffering, ensuring that the very thing darkness intended to use to destroy your destiny was being transformed, even in the moments you could not feel it being transformed, into the very foundation of your greatness. The marks you carry are not shameful. They are sacred. They are the evidence of a life that has been pressed but not crushed, perplexed but not in despair, persecuted but not abandoned, struck down but not destroyed. That language comes from the Apostle Paul, a man who understood the marks of the chosen better than almost anyone who has ever lived, because he bore them in his own body, in his own story, in the decades of suffering that preceded the letters that changed the entire world. Your story is changing something too. Maybe you can't see it yet. Maybe the full picture is still hidden from your natural eyes. But in the spirit, the chapters that are being written through your pain are already being prepared to reach people you have not yet met, in seasons you have not yet entered, with a power that only comes from a life that has been genuinely, thoroughly, and purposefully tested. The marks of the chosen are written on your pain, and those marks are not a record of everything you lost. They are the signature of everything you are about to become. There is something that darkness understood about you long before you understood it about yourself. Before you had the language to describe what you carried, before you had the wisdom to recognize the weight of your own spirit, before you had anyone in your life who could look at you and name the gift they saw, the enemy already knew. And that knowledge, that recognition from the realm of darkness, is the reason your life has never been easy. It is the reason resistance found you early. It is the reason the battles came before the breakthroughs, and the warfare began before you even knew there was a war. You do not fight the way other people fight. And you have probably always sensed that, even if you never had the words for it. There is something in you that does not yield when it is supposed to yield. There is something in you that keeps rising, when every natural law of exhaustion and discouragement says it should stay down. There is a resilience in you that has surprised even you, because you have been at the end of yourself more times than you can count. And yet here you are, still standing, still seeking, still carrying a flame that the longest and most relentless winds of your life could not extinguish. That is not human strength. You need to stop giving yourself credit for something that was never just human. That is a divine deposit. That is the Spirit of God operating inside a vessel that was chosen, consecrated, and set apart before the foundations of the earth were ever laid. The power inside you is not something you developed through discipline alone, though discipline has its place. It is not something you earned through suffering alone, though suffering has formed you in ways comfort never could. The power inside you is something that was given, placed, breathed into the very architecture of your spirit by a God who does not make mistakes and does not choose vessels randomly. When heaven selects a life for a particular assignment, it does not do so casually. It does not glance in your direction and think perhaps this one will do. Heaven looks at the full scope of what a soul is capable of, the depth of their capacity for love, the reach of their potential influence, the magnitude of the impact their obedience could generate across generations. And then heaven says, this is the one I choose. Heaven said that about you, and darkness heard it. Darkness has always heard it. That is why the opposition in your life has carried a particular ferocity that you could not always explain by natural circumstances alone. You have encountered resistance that felt too organized to be coincidental, too targeted to be random, too persistent to be merely human in origin. There have been patterns in your suffering that, if you trace them back far enough, all pointed to the same source. An enemy that recognized the threat you posed before you ever recognized it in yourself. An adversary that has been working overtime to delay you, discourage you, distract you, and if possible, destroy you. Not because you are weak, but because you are powerful, beyond what you have yet been allowed to fully demonstrate. The scripture declares it plainly in the first letter of John, chapter 4, verse 4. Greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. Not slightly greater, not marginally greater. Incomparably, infinitely, absolutely greater. The spirit that took up residence inside you the moment you surrendered. Your life to God is not on equal footing with the darkness that has opposed you. It is not a contest of equals. It is the overwhelming, undefeatable supremacy of the Most High God dwelling within a human vessel, and that vessel is you. But here is the dimension of this truth that most people never fully grasp, and it is the dimension that will begin to change the way you move through every challenge that remains ahead of you. The power of the Spirit inside you is not passive. It is not a shield that only activates when you have done everything right, when you have prayed long enough, fasted hard enough, or behaved well enough. It is a living, active, ever-present force that moves on your behalf, even when you are too tired to move for yourself. It intercedes when you have run out of words. It covers you when you forget to cover yourself. It fights battles in the unseen realm that you will only discover were fought when you look back years from now and realize you should not have made it through that season, but you did, and the only explanation that holds up under honest examination is grace. Your spirit is far stronger than you realize. Far stronger. The gap between what you believe your spirit is capable of and what it is actually capable of is wider than the horizon you can currently see. And that gap is not something to feel inadequate about. It is something to feel genuinely, deeply hopeful about, because it means that the version of you that is coming, the one who has fully stepped into the authority, the clarity, the power, and the purpose that heaven deposited in you, that version of you is going to do things that will astonish even you. Not because you will become someone different, but because you will finally become fully who you already are. Think about the eagle that spent years in a cage, not because it was weak, but because it did not yet know that the cage had a door, and the door was never locked. The wings were always there. The capacity for flight was always there. The sky was always there. What was missing was the revelation. The moment of knowing that said, you were not made for this ceiling. You were made for the open sky. And the instant that knowing broke through, everything changed. Not the wings, not the sky, the knowing. That is what is breaking through in you right now. Not new power being added, but the recognition of the power that was always there. The veil being lifted on a strength that has been present in your spirit since the day heaven breathed you into existence. You are not becoming something you were not. You are finally becoming everything you always were. This ministry exists to deliver that revelation to every chosen one who needs to hear it. Every word spoken in these messages, every hour invested in prayer and preparation behind them, every story shared, every truth declared is poured out with one purpose: to help you see what heaven has always seen when it looks at you. And if these messages have been a source of strength, a place of refuge, a voice that has spoken to the parts of you that needed to be reached, and if you feel led to support the continuation of this work, there is a link in the description below where you can do that. Every contribution helps this ministry sustain. the mission of reaching chosen ones who are still waiting to hear that they are not forgotten. It is completely voluntary, and it is received with deep gratitude. But whether you are in a season where you can give or not, know this without any reservation. You are valued here. Your presence matters, and your simply being in this community is a blessing that words cannot fully measure. If this message is reaching something real in your spirit today, take a moment to like this video and share it with someone whose soul needs to hear that the power inside them is greater than anything standing against them. Subscribe so that every message we release continues to find you. You belong in this community, and the revelation is only getting deeper from here. If you have ever wondered why your life has been harder than it seemed like it needed to be, why the resistance you encountered felt disproportionate to the choices you made, why you were targeted by opposition that arrived before you had even done anything significant enough to merit that level of attack, then what you are about to read is going to reframe everything, not as an excuse, not as a comfort that glosses over the reality of what you suffered, but as a revelation that transforms the meaning of every battle you have ever fought and every scar you have ever carried. The enemy does not waste resources. This is something that the church rarely teaches with the clarity it deserves, but it is a truth that becomes undeniable when you begin to look honestly at the pattern of spiritual warfare. Darkness is strategic. It is calculated. It does not randomly select targets and pour concentrated, sustained, organized opposition into lives that do not present a significant threat to its agenda. The level of warfare you experience is always proportional to the level of your assignment. Always. There are no exceptions to this principle. And when you look back across your life and trace the timeline of every attack, every setback, every season of inexplicable difficulty, and you see how early it all began, how targeted it felt, how relentless it was even in seasons, when you were not yet walking in any visible form of your calling, what you are seeing is the enemy's acknowledgement of what you carry. Darkness tried to stop you before heaven could fully deploy you, and it failed. Let that settle somewhere deep in your chest for a moment. Every force that came against you, every weapon that was formed in the unseen realm and aimed at your destiny, every coordinated attempt to derail you before you reached the fullness of your purpose, none of it succeeded in doing what it was sent to do. You are still here. The assignment is still intact. The calling has not been revoked. The fire has not been permanently extinguished. You made it through every ambush that was designed to end your story. And the fact that you are still reading these words, still breathing, still seeking, still spiritually alive and reaching toward God is the most powerful testimony you could ever offer. You survived a targeted campaign against your destiny, and you did not just survive it. You were shaped by it. There is a passage in the book of Job that most people rush past because it is uncomfortable, but it holds one of the most clarifying truths in all of Scripture about why the chosen suffer the way they do. When Satan appeared before God and God asked where he had come from, Satan answered that he had been roaming through the earth, going back and forth in it. And then God, the God of all creation, the one who holds every galaxy in the palm of his hand, said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job?" He specifically drew the enemy's attention to the one he had chosen. Now that is a staggering truth if you sit with it long enough. God did not hide Job from the enemy's gaze. He pointed to him. He essentially said, "Look at this one. Look at this life I have built. This is my servant." Why would God do that? Because Job's story was not just for Job. It was for every generation that would ever read it and find themselves in it. It was for you right now, in this very moment, as you begin to understand that the targeting you have experienced in your own life is not evidence of God's absence, but evidence of God's confidence. When heaven points to a life and says to darkness, "Have you considered this one?" it is because that life has been built to withstand the examination, to endure the testing, and to emerge from it in a way that glorifies God and strengthens every other chosen one who witnesses the story. You are a Job, not in the sense of endless suffering with no resolution, because Job's story did not end in devastation. It ended in restoration so complete and so abundant that everything he lost was returned double. But you are a Job in the sense that your life has been the subject of a conversation in heavenly places that you were not privy to, a conversation where God essentially vouched for you, said your name with confidence, and allowed the testing because he already knew how your story would end. He already knows how your story ends, and it does not end in defeat. Now, consider another dimension of this truth. Intensity of the enemy's opposition to your life was not just about stopping you. It was also about something the enemy fundamentally cannot do, and that is create. Darkness cannot create anything. It can only corrupt, counterfeit, and attempt to destroy what God has already made. And so when darkness encounters a life that carries genuine divine power, genuine anointing, genuine capacity for kingdom impact, it has only one available response: attack it before it fully awakens. The strategy is always preemptive, always aimed at the potential rather than the present reality. The enemy was not fighting the you that existed in your most broken season. It was fighting the you that you are becoming right now, the you that heaven has always seen, the fully deployed, fully awake, fully authorized, chosen one, whose obedience and boldness will shake the darkness in ways it cannot afford to allow. You were attacked in advance of your arrival. Let that reframe every wound. And there is something else worth understanding about the nature of the battles you have faced. The enemy is not omniscient. It does not know everything about your future. It cannot read the mind of God, but it can observe. It can see the anointing on a life. It can detect the fingerprints of divine calling. It can sense the frequency of a spirit that has been set apart for something significant. And when it detects that frequency, it responds with a level of opposition designed to make you believe the opposite of what heaven says about you. Every whisper that said you were not enough, every circumstance that seemed to confirm your worthlessness, every pattern of failure that made you question whether God had truly called you, those were not revelations of truth. They were strategic deceptions designed to get you to disqualify yourself before the enemy ever had to disqualify you. Because if darkness can get you to believe the lie about who you are, it does not need to fight you anymore. It just needs you to fight yourself. And for a season, many chosen ones do exactly that. They become their own greatest opposition. They internalize the warfare and turn it inward, policing their own dreams, dismissing their own gifts, silencing their own voices before anyone else can silence them. The wound from outside eventually becomes a wall on the inside, but that wall is coming down now, because you are beginning to understand what the opposition was actually about. You are beginning to see that the ferocity of every battle you survived was never an indictment of your weakness. It was a declaration of your significance. The more furiously darkness fought to contain you, the more clearly heaven was confirming that what you carry cannot be contained. The more aggressively the enemy targeted your peace, your relationships, your faith, your sense of identity, the louder the testimony that your identity is something worth targeting, something worth fighting to suppress, something that, once fully released, will be utterly unstoppable. Think about every lion that has ever been caged. The cage is not there because the lion is insignificant. The cage is there because the lion is dangerous. The cage is the enemy's acknowledgement of the lion's power. And you, chosen one, have been caged long enough by fear, by the opinions of people who did not understand your calling, by wounds that convinced you to make yourself smaller, by seasons of confusion that made you question whether the fire in your spirit was real or just wishful thinking. It is real. It has always been real. And the intensity of everything that came against it is the most irrefutable proof you will ever receive. The opposition was fierce because the calling is real. The battle was long because the victory is significant. The enemy fought hard because heaven prepared something extraordinary. Every weapon formed against you was formed in the recognition of what you were made to carry. And not one of those weapons, not a single one, was ever given the final authority over your story. That authority belongs to God alone, and God has already spoken your ending. It is written in glory. It is sealed in covenant. It is guaranteed by a promise that no force in heaven, on earth, or beneath the earth has the power to revoke. You were fought because you matter. Now it is time to live like you know it. There is a specific kind of pain that belongs exclusively to the chosen, and it is the pain of the stripping season. You know this pain. You have lived inside it. It is the season when everything you built begins to come apart, when the structures you organized your life around start to creak and buckle and eventually fall, when the identity you carefully constructed from your achievements and relationships and sense of purpose gets dismantled piece by piece until you are standing in the rubble of what used to be your life, and you cannot find a single familiar landmark to orient yourself by. It is the season when God goes quiet in a way that feels like abandonment, when prayer feels like speaking into an empty room, when the faith that once felt like bedrock begins to feel like sand shifting beneath your feet. If you have been in that season, or if you are in it right now, then what follows is going to matter to you in ways that reach far beyond what words normally reach. The stripping season is not a sign that God has finished with you. It is a sign that God is about to do something in you and through you that the previous version of yourself did not have the capacity to carry. And because heaven operates with absolute precision, it will never pour the new wine into the old wineskin. It will never place the weight of the next chapter onto a foundation that was built for a smaller story. Before the expansion comes the excavation. Before the building comes the clearing. And the clearing, from the inside, feels catastrophic. It feels like loss. It feels like punishment. It feels like the cruelest possible response from a God you gave everything to serve. But it is neither cruelty nor abandonment. It is the most intimate form of preparation heaven ever performs. Consider what a sculptor does when presented with a raw block of stone. The work does not begin with adding material. It begins with removing it. Every strike of the chisel is purposeful, aimed not at destroying the stone, but at liberating the form that was always hidden inside it. The debris that falls away is not the sculpture. It is everything that was obscuring the sculpture. And if the stone had feelings, if it could experience the impact of every blow and the terror of watching pieces of itself fall away without understanding the artist's vision, it would likely conclude that it was being destroyed. It would feel the pain of loss without being able to see the masterpiece that each loss was revealing. You are that stone, and God is that sculptor. And every piece of you that fell away in the stripping seasons was not your value being diminished. It was the obscuring material being removed so that the true form of who you are could finally be seen. First by you, and then by a world that needs what only you were carved to offer. Think about what was stripped from you. Perhaps it was a career that you had invested years of your life into building that gave you your sense of worth and your sense of forward momentum. And then one day it was simply gone. Perhaps it was a relationship that felt so central to your identity that you genuinely could not imagine who you were without it. And then you had to find out. Perhaps it was your health, and the stripping came through a season of physical limitation, the bait that forced you into a stillness you never would have chosen, God, and you never would have discovered in any other way. Perhaps it was your reputation, and you watched something you could not control rewrite the story others told about you, leaving you powerless to defend yourself with anything other than your integrity and your continued faithfulness. Perhaps it was your faith itself that was stripped. Not the faith given to you by other people, not the second-hand belief you inherited from a culture or a tradition or a childhood church, but something deeper and more essential. Perhaps God allowed the scaffolding of everything you thought you believed to be shaken until only what was truly yours remained. And in that shaking, you discovered that what was truly yours was smaller than you thought, more fragile than you had admitted, and more honest than anything you had ever presented to the world. That stripped, honest, fragile, real faith was the beginning of something that no storm will ever be able to take from you again, because it was no longer borrowed. It was forged. The things that survive the stripping season are the things that were always real. And what is real in you is more than enough for what heaven has prepared. There is a principle woven throughout Scripture that the chosen consistently encounter, and it can be summarized simply as this: decrease precedes increase. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before he stood before Pharaoh. 40 years of obscurity, of reduced circumstances, of a life that by every outward measurement represented failure and retreat from the promise. And yet, every one of those 40 years was curriculum. Every encounter with the desert, with his own limitations, with the silence of a God who had not yet spoken from the burning bush, was preparing a man who would need unshakable humility to carry the authority he was about to be given. The wilderness did not delay Moses. The wilderness made Moses. Your wilderness made you too. Joseph went from his father's favorite to the bottom of a pit, to a slave's position, to a prison cell, before he ever stood in the palace. And the detail that the Scripture preserves about Joseph throughout that entire descent is devastating in its simplicity. It says that the Lord was with Joseph, not that the Lord removed Joseph from his suffering, not that the Lord explained to Joseph why each terrible thing was happening, but that the Lord was with him, present, active, working in the invisible layers of a story that from the outside looked like the systematic destruction of a life, but from heaven's perspective was the meticulous construction of a destiny. The Lord was with you in your pit. The Lord was with you in your prison. The Lord was with you in every season that felt like descent, like demotion, like the erasure of everything you had hoped your life would be. He was not watching from a distance with indifference. He was present in the details, working in the places you could not see, turning what darkness intended as a grave into the very geography of your graduation. And now consider this. Everything that was stripped from you created space, real, tangible, spiritual space. The relationships that left took with them the noise that was drowning out the voice of God in your life. The career that fell apart removed the idol that your identity had quietly built around achievement. The season of physical limitation created a stillness in which you finally heard things from heaven that the busyness of your former life had been competing with for years. The stripping was not subtraction. It was preparation for a different kind of addition. The kind where what comes in is not just more of what you already had, but something of a completely different order, something that matches the calling rather than merely the comfort. Because here is what God was making room for when He allowed the stripping to happen. He was making room for Himself, for more of His presence, for a deeper habitation of His Spirit in a vessel that had been cleared of the clutter that was keeping Him from filling every room. You cannot fill a cup that is already full. You cannot expand into a space that is already occupied. The emptying, as devastating as it felt, was an act of divine hospitality. God preparing the interior of your life for a level of His presence that your previous fullness could never have accommodated. And that presence is what changes everything. Not the restored career, not the new relationships, not the returned health or the rebuilt reputation. These things matter, and God restores them, as He restored to Job everything that was taken, and more besides. But the foundation of your next season is not the restoration of what was lost. It is the presence of God filling the space that loss created. It is the depth of intimacy with heaven that only the stripped and emptied and genuinely surrendered soul ever truly discovers. You were emptied so you could be filled in a way you have never been filled before. You were brought low so that what is built next would be built on the only foundation that cannot be shaken. You were made to feel small so that you would stop building to your own scale and begin building to God's. The stripping was not the end of your story. It was the end of the version of your story that was too small for what heaven always intended. What comes next is not a rebuilding of what was lost. It is the construction of something that was never possible until now, something that required exactly the kind of foundation that only suffering and surrender and genuine emptying can produce. You are not coming out of the stripping season the same. You are coming out capable. You are coming out cleared. You are coming out ready for a weight of glory that the former version of you could not have held without breaking, and you will not break under this. There is a gift inside you that the world has spent a very long time trying to convince you was a problem. The way you feel things at a depth that others seem untouched by. The way you sense atmospheres when you walk into a room, picking up on undercurrents of tension or pain or spiritual heaviness that no one else appears to notice. The way your intuition speaks to you in a language that bypasses logic entirely and lands somewhere deeper, in a place that simply knows without being able to fully explain how it knows. The way you are moved by beauty, by suffering, by the invisible weight of things that most people walk past without a second glance. The way you carry the burdens of others as though they were your own, sometimes to the point of exhaustion, sometimes to the point of wondering whether you are absorbing too much of a world that was never meant to rest entirely on your shoulders. You were told, perhaps not always in words but in 1,000 subtle ways, that this sensitivity was a liability, that it made you too emotional, too intense, too much, that the rational world had no real place for someone who felt so deeply and perceived so broadly, that the practical path forward required you to close some of those inner doors, to turn down the volume on the frequencies your spirit was naturally tuned to receive, to become a little less of what you were in order to fit more comfortably into spaces that were never actually designed to hold you. And perhaps for a season you tried. Perhaps you built walls. Perhaps you learned to perform a version of yourself that was more manageable to the rooms you occupied, a version that smiled at the right times and processed everything alone and never let anyone see how far down the feeling went. Perhaps you became so practiced at containing yourself that you began to wonder whether the contained version was the real version, whether the person who felt everything was just an oversensitivity to be managed rather than a gift to be honored. Chosen one, I need to say this to you with every ounce of clarity available. What you carry is not a malfunction. It is a mechanism. It is one of the most sophisticated and powerful spiritual instruments that heaven ever places inside a human life. And the reason darkness worked so hard to make you ashamed of it, to make you suppress it, to make you apologize for it, is precisely because darkness understood what you did not. A chosen one who is fully awakened to the depth and the reach and the authority of their spiritual sensitivity is one of the most dangerous forces the kingdom of God has ever deployed against the works of darkness. Your sensitivity is not weakness wearing a spiritual costume. It is a weapon carrying a spiritual assignment. Consider what genuine spiritual sensitivity actually produces in a life that has been trained and surrendered and properly understood. It produces discernment, the ability to perceive what is real beneath what is presented, to see through the surface of situations and people and spiritual atmospheres to what is actually operating underneath. This is not a minor gift. In a world saturated with deception, with carefully constructed appearances, with spiritual counterfeits designed to mislead even the elect, the ability to discern what is genuinely of God and what is not is one of the most critically needed gifts the body of Christ possesses. Your sensitivity produces intercession of a depth and accuracy that analytical minds cannot replicate. When you feel the weight of a situation in your spirit before your mind has processed the details, when you find yourself burdened for someone without knowing why, and you take that burden to God in prayer, you are operating in one of the highest functions of spiritual gifting available to a human being. You are not being emotional. You are being a conduit. Heaven is using the very thing the world told you was excessive to channel prayers that reach into situations and lives in unseen realities with the precision and a power that changes outcomes. Your sensitivity produces compassion that heals. Not the performative compassion of someone going through the motions of care, but the genuine, costly, deep compassion of a person who actually feels what another person carries. That kind of compassion is rare. It is irreplaceable, and it is the very thing that makes people feel truly seen, perhaps for the first time in their lives, when they encounter someone like you. You have probably had the experience of a stranger or an acquaintance opening up to you in ways they have never opened up to anyone else, sharing things they cannot explain why they are telling you, finding in your presence a safety they did not know they were looking for. That is not coincidence. That is your gift at work. That is the anointing on your sensitivity, creating an atmosphere of genuine safety that hurting people are drawn to like light, and your sensitivity produces a capacity for encountering God that those with harder, more defended inner lives rarely access. The places in you that feel too open, too raw, too exposed are the very places where the presence of God enters most fully. The thinner the wall between your spirit and the unseen realm, the more directly you experience the movements of heaven, the more readily you hear the voice that speaks not in the earthquake or the fire, but in the still small whisper that only the genuinely attentive spirit catches. Stop apologizing for how deeply you are made. Stop managing the very gift that heaven placed in you to be released. Before we go further, I want to pause and share something from my heart, because this ministry and this message exist because of a genuine calling to reach chosen ones like you, wherever you are, whatever you are walking through. This channel lost its monetization on YouTube, but that has not stopped the work, and it will not stop it, because this is not about revenue. It is about ministry. Every video produced here is made out of a sincere desire to serve you, to speak to the parts of you that need to be reached, and to keep delivering the word that heaven has placed on this channel for this community. If these messages have meant something to you, if you have found in them a voice that speaks to the depth of who you are, and if you feel led in your heart to help sustain this work, there is a donation link in the description below and in the pinned comment. Every contribution, no matter the size, goes directly into keeping this ministry alive and making sure these messages continue to reach chosen ones who are still waiting to hear that they are seen, that they are not forgotten, and that their gift is not a burden. It is entirely voluntary. Give only if your heart leads you to. And if this is not your season to give financially, your presence here, your faithfulness to this community, and your willingness to share these messages with others is a form of support that means more than you know. If this message is speaking to something real in your spirit today, take a moment to like this video. Leave a comment telling us what is resonating with you, and share it with someone whose sensitivity has been misread as weakness for too long. Subscribe if you have not already, so that every message in this series continues to find you. Your sensitivity is sacred. It is time to wear it that way. There is a record being kept that you have no idea exists, not a record of your failures. Though the enemy would love for you to believe that is the only accounting heaven concerns itself with, not a ledger of your shortcomings or your inconsistencies or the seasons when your faith wavered and your obedience faltered, and the distance between who you knew you were called to be and who you were actually showing up as felt unbridgeable. That record exists too, but it has already been addressed by a grace so complete and so final that its power to define you has been permanently revoked. No, the record I am speaking of is something different entirely. It is the record of everything you did when no one was watching. Everything you chose when the choice cost you something and no one was there to applaud the sacrifice. Everything you carried in faithfulness and in silence, and in the long, unglamorous, unrewarded stretches of your journey that the world never saw and never acknowledged and never rewarded. Heaven saw all of it, every single moment of it, and heaven kept the record. There is a verse in the book of Malachi, chapter 3, verse 16, that contains one of the most quietly stunning revelations in all of Scripture. It says that those who feared the Lord spoke with one another, and the Lord paid attention and heard them. And a book of remembrance was written before him of those who feared the Lord and esteemed his name, a book of remembrance, written before God himself, containing the names and the deeds and the faithfulness of ordinary people who simply chose to honor God in the ordinary moments of their ordinary lives, with no audience, no recognition, and no immediate reward. Your name is in that book. Every time you chose integrity, when dishonesty would have been easier, and no one would have known the difference, it was recorded. Every time you extended forgiveness to someone who did not deserve it and never asked for it, and you did it not for them, but because you understood that unforgiveness was a cage you refused to stay in, it was recorded. Every time you showed up to serve in a capacity that felt beneath the calling you sensed on your life, doing it faithfully anyway because you understood that faithfulness in small things was the prerequisite for authority in large ones. It was recorded. Every time you prayed for someone who had hurt you, not perfectly, not without the grief of the wound still present, but genuinely, because your love for God was larger than your offense, it was recorded. Every night you spent on your knees when the morning brought no visible evidence that any of it was working, those nights are in the book. Every act of generosity you performed from a place of genuine scarcity, giving what you could not afford to give, because something in your spirit recognized a need greater than your own comfort. Those acts are in the book. Every time you chose to worship in the middle of a season that gave you absolutely no natural reason to worship. When the circumstances screamed contradiction to everything you were declaring in faith, and you declared it anyway because your trust in God's character was not contingent on your present circumstances making sense. Those moments of defiant, costly, beautiful worship are in the book. You have been building something in the unseen realm that you cannot yet see the full shape of, and the building has been happening not in the grand, visible, publicly celebrated moments of your life, but in the quiet, private, unglamorous faithfulness of 10,000 ordinary days. The world measures significance by visibility. Heaven measures it by faithfulness, and by heaven's measurement, the life you have lived in the hidden place, the prayers spoken into empty rooms, the obedience exercised in seasons of obscurity, the character maintained when no one was there to grade it. That life is extraordinarily significant. It is the life of someone whose foundation has been laid not in the shallow soil of public approval, but in the bedrock of genuine, private, tested devotion to God. And now consider what the scripture declares will happen to that kind of faithfulness. In Matthew chapter 6, Jesus uses a specific phrase 3 times in the space of a few verses. Once when speaking about giving, once when speaking about prayer, and once when speaking about fasting. Each time he addresses something done in secret rather than for public recognition, he says the same thing. Your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly, not might reward you, not will consider rewarding. You will reward you openly. The private faithfulness does not stay private forever. At some point, heaven takes what was sown in secret and brings it into public expression, into open demonstration, into a visible manifestation that makes clear to everyone watching that this person's life was not accidental, was not lucky, was not the product of fortunate circumstance, but of a faithfulness that was being cultivated in the hidden place over many years. That open reward is coming for you, and it is coming with the full weight of every hidden seed you planted behind it. Think about the nature of seeds for a moment, because the agricultural metaphor is one that heaven returns to repeatedly for a reason. A seed planted in the ground does not produce visible results immediately. There is a period, sometimes a very long period, where, from every outward perspective, nothing appears to be happening. The ground looks undisturbed. The surface shows no evidence of the life that is developing beneath it. And yet underground, in the darkness, in the silence, in the place where no observer can see or measure or validate what is occurring, the seed is doing the most critical work of its entire existence. It is putting down root. It is reaching toward a light it cannot yet see. It is becoming, in the hidden place, everything it needs to be in order to sustain the growth that will eventually break the surface. You have been that seed, and the root system you have developed in the hidden seasons of your life, in the long underground stretches of preparation and obscurity and quiet faithfulness, is deeper and stronger and more extensive than you have any current ability to measure. And when the breakthrough comes, when what has been developing beneath the surface finally pushes through into the visible, it will not be fragile. It will not be a thin, tentative shoot that the first strong wind bends to the ground. It will be a tree, rooted so deeply that storms can move the branches without ever threatening the foundation. Your faithfulness in secret built roots that cannot be shaken. And there is another dimension to this truth that speaks directly to the loneliness you felt in the hidden seasons. The sense that your efforts were invisible, that your sacrifice was uncounted, that your faithfulness was unwitnessed, and therefore somehow less real or less valid than the faith of those whose lives appeared to be producing visible fruit in real time. That loneliness was a lie, not a lie born of malice toward you, but a lie born of limited perspective, the perspective of a creature bound by time and visibility, trying to assess the significance of work being done in an eternal dimension that time and visibility cannot contain. You were never unseen, not for a single moment of your hidden faithfulness. The eyes that matter most, the eyes that see not the outward appearance but the heart, those eyes were on you in every private moment, witnessing every quiet sacrifice, noting every act of love that cost you something and produced nothing visible, keeping the account with a precision and a tenderness that the finite mind struggles to fully comprehend. The psalmist understood this when he wrote in Psalm 56 verse 8 that God collects every tear in a bottle and records each one in a book, every tear. Not just the tears shed in public moments of acknowledged suffering, but the ones that fell in private, in the dark, in the seasons when grief had no audience and sorrow had no witness. God collected them. God recorded them. God kept them. He kept yours. Every tear you cried that no one saw. Every prayer you prayed that no one heard. Every act of faithfulness that no one acknowledged. Every seed of love and obedience and surrender that you planted in the hidden ground of your private life with God. All of it has been kept. All of it has been recorded. All of it is alive in the unseen realm, growing toward a harvest that is about to break the surface in ways that will leave no one, including you, in any doubt about who was watching, who was faithful, and who is about to receive the open reward of a secret life well lived. Heaven has been watching your faithfulness in the hidden place, and what has been seen in secret is about to be spoken out loud, in the open, for every watching eye to witness. The record is full, the harvest is ready, and your name is called. Something is happening inside you right now that defies the language of the ordinary. You may have noticed it before you even arrived at this message today. A restlessness that is not anxiety, a hunger that is not physical, a stirring in the deepest part of your spirit that feels like movement after a long stillness, like the first tremor of ground that has been frozen through a winter, so long you had almost stopped believing spring was possible. It is not loud. It does not announce itself with fanfare or with the kind of dramatic spiritual experience that makes for an impressive testimony. It is quiet, it is deep, and it is absolutely unmistakable to the part of you that has been waiting for it longer than you consciously know. This is the awakening, and it is happening to you right now, in this very moment, as these words land in the space where your spirit lives. There are awakenings that happen on the surface of a life, the kind that are emotional and immediate and powerful in the moment, but do not reach the root system, do not alter the foundational architecture of who a person is at their deepest level. These surface awakenings are real, and they have their place, but they are not what is happening in you right now. What is happening in you right now is something that begins in the ancient part of your spirit, the part that existed in the mind of God before your body was ever formed, the part that carries the original inscription of your divine assignment, the part that has never forgotten what you were made for. Even every other part of you was buried under years of pain and confusion, and the accumulated weight of a world that consistently tried to tell you a smaller story about yourself than the one heaven wrote. That ancient part of you is waking up, and when it fully wakes, nothing will be the same. Think about what happens when something that has been dormant is awakened. A seed that has been lying in dry ground for years will germinate the moment water reaches it. Not gradually, not tentatively, but with an immediacy and a vitality that speaks to the fact that the life inside it was never actually gone. It was waiting, compressed and still and patient in a way that living things are capable of being when the conditions for their full expression have not yet arrived. The moment conditions change, the moment the water comes, everything that was compressed releases. Everything that was waiting moves. The life that appeared to be absent reveals itself to have been present all along, simply waiting for the right moment to express what it always was. You are that seed, and the water is reaching you now. There is a phrase used in the book of Ezekiel during the vision of the valley of dry bones that has never lost its power in the thousands of years since it was first spoken. God asked the prophet a question that on the surface seemed almost cruel in its impossibility, standing as he was in the middle of a valley, scattered with bones so dry that all moisture, all memory of life, had long since departed from them. The question was, can these bones live? And the prophet, in one of the most honest and spiritually intelligent responses in all of Scripture, answered, "Lord God, you know." Not yes, because the evidence before his natural eyes gave him no basis for yes. Not no, because he had walked with God long enough to know that God does not ask questions without already possessing the answer. Just the pure, humble, open surrender of "you know, God. You know what I cannot know from where I am standing." And then God spoke to the bones, and the bones came together, and breath entered them, and they lived, and they stood on their feet, an exceedingly great army. That is the picture of what is happening in your spirit right now. The dry places are receiving breath. The scattered pieces are being called back into alignment. The parts of you that felt dead, that you had quietly grieved and begun to make peace with never recovering, are being addressed by the same voice that spoke to those bones in the valley. The voice that does not ask about impossibility, because impossibility is not a category that exists in the vocabulary of God. He is speaking to your dry bones, and they are beginning to respond. Now, here is something important to understand about the nature of this awakening and why it is happening at this particular moment in your life. Spiritual awakenings of this depth and this quality do not arrive randomly. They are timed. They are released by heaven in correspondence with the approach of a season that requires a fully awakened vessel. When God is about to move someone into the next chapter of their assignment, He does not wait until they arrive at the threshold of that chapter to begin the awakening process. He begins it in advance, preparing the interior before the exterior changes, aligning the spirit before the circumstances shift, so that when the door opens and the invitation comes to step into the fullness of what was prepared, the person walking through that door is ready to carry what is waiting on the other side. The awakening you are experiencing is not preparation for a distant future. It is preparation for a near one. What heaven is stirring in you right now is being activated in direct correspondence with something that is about to open in your life. The stirring and the door are connected. The interior movement and the exterior shift are timed together by a God who does not operate in coincidence but in covenant, who does not wake a sleeping soldier without a reason, who does not breathe on dry bones without intending to march them somewhere significant. Something is about to open, and you are being made ready for it now. But there is a choice embedded in every awakening, and it is a choice that the awakening itself cannot make for you. You can feel the stirring and dismiss it as wishful thinking. You can sense the movement of God in your spirit and talk yourself out of trusting it, falling back on the old familiar narrative that says you have been disappointed before, that hope has cost you too much, that it is safer to stay in the managed, defended, carefully protected version of existence that at least never surprises you with loss because it never fully commits to expectation. Or you can lean into it. You can let the stirring be what it is. You can open the parts of yourself that have been closed for a long time and allow the breath of heaven to reach the places that have been waiting for it. You can say, with the same honest surrender as that prophet standing in the valley, God, you know what I do not know, and I am choosing to trust that you would not wake me up without a reason, that you would not stir what you did not intend to use, that you would not breathe on what you did not intend to raise. That surrender is not weakness. It is the most powerful thing a chosen one can do in the moment of awakening. It is the opening of the door from the inside, the yes that allows heaven to complete in the visible what it has already begun in the invisible. And right now, in this community of chosen ones who have gathered around this message, something collective is stirring too. There is an awakening that does not just belong to one person, but to a generation of set-apart souls who have been in the hidden place long enough, who have been in the stripping season long enough, who have been in the valley long enough, and who are now hearing the same breath of God moving across the dry places simultaneously, calling them to rise together. You are part of that generation. You are not alone in this awakening. And the community of chosen ones rising around you is one of the confirmations that what you are feeling is real, that the movement in your spirit is not isolated or accidental, but shared and purposeful and profoundly, divinely timed. Stop for just a moment right now and let this land where it needs to land. Then go to the comments and type just these 3 words, I am ready. 3 words, that is all. Let heaven and this community witness your declaration. Let your own spirit hear you say it out loud. I am ready. Because you are. And what is coming will confirm it in ways that will leave you breathless. You have been in the waiting room long enough. And if there is one thing that the waiting room does to a person over an extended period of time, it is this. It begins to feel permanent. What started as a season of preparation begins to feel like a sentence. What heaven framed as a threshold begins to feel like a wall. The temporary begins to masquerade as the eternal, and the soul that was once alive with anticipation begins to quietly, almost imperceptibly, make peace with the idea that perhaps the door it was waiting for was never actually going to open. Perhaps the assignment was theoretical. Perhaps the calling was real, but the deployment was indefinitely postponed. Perhaps this right here, the waiting, the obscurity, the unfinished feeling of a life that has been prepared, but not yet released. Perhaps this is simply what the rest of the journey looks like. That is the lie of the extended threshold, and it is one of the most effective weapons the enemy has ever deployed against the chosen. Precisely because it does not require a dramatic assault. It simply requires patience. It simply requires that enough time passes without visible confirmation that the waiting has purpose until the soul, exhausted and bewildered, begins to downsize its own expectations to fit the smallness of what it can currently see. But chosen one, hear this clearly. The waiting room is not your permanent address. It never was. It was always a corridor, not a destination. And corridors exist for one purpose only, to connect one room to the next. The length of the corridor does not determine the significance of what is on the other side of the door. It determines the degree of readiness that was required before the door could be opened. And the length of your corridor, the depth of your waiting, the extended nature of your preparation is not evidence that what is ahead is small. It is evidence that what is ahead is so significant, so weighty, so consequential in its eternal impact, that heaven required a preparation period proportional to the magnitude of the assignment. The longer the wait, the larger the door. There is a moment described in the Gospel of John, chapter 5, where Jesus encounters a man who had been lying beside the pool of Bethesda for 38 years. 38 years of waiting for the water to be stirred, for the moment of healing that never seemed to arrive in time, for someone to help him in a season when his own strength was insufficient, and the help he needed was always just beyond his reach. And Jesus, walking through a crowd of sick and waiting people, stopped at this man specifically, not at the person who had been waiting the shortest time, not at the one whose case was most recent or most visible or most loudly announced, at the one who had been waiting the longest. And he asked him a question that cuts through every layer of resigned acceptance that long waiting produces. Do you want to be made well? It seems like an obvious question, but it is not, because extended waiting does something to the will. It creates a complicated relationship between the soul and its own desire, where wanting too much feels dangerous because the gap between the wanting and the having has been so wide for so long, where hope has been deferred so many times that the heart grows sick of its own hoping, and the management of disappointment becomes more practiced than the exercise of genuine expectation. Jesus was not asking whether the man was capable of healing. He was asking whether the man was still willing to want it, whether he had retained the interior posture of genuine desire after 38 years of unanswered waiting. The question is the same for you today. Do you still want it? Do you still want the fullness of what you were made for? The complete expression of the assignment heaven placed on your life, the open door into the season that everything you have endured was preparing you to enter? Or has the waiting room worn down the wanting to the point where you have begun to settle, to negotiate with your own destiny, to accept a fraction of what heaven intended, because the fraction at least feels achievable? Heaven is asking you that question right now, and the answer you give in the interior of your spirit. Not the performed answer, not the theologically correct answer, but the real, honest, unguarded answer from the deepest part of who you are. That answer determines your posture for everything that follows. Because the door is not opening to a soul that has stopped reaching for it. The assignment is not deployed into hands that have been quietly folded in resignation. The next chapter is not written for the version of you that decided the story was probably over. It is written for the version of you that, against all visible evidence, against the accumulated weight of every disappointment and every unanswered prayer, and every delayed promise, still lifts its eyes to the hills and still declares, with a trembling but genuine conviction, "My help comes from the Lord, and He is not finished with me yet." That version of you is who is standing at the threshold right now, and the threshold is real. This is not metaphor used to make you feel better about a waiting room that has no exit. This is a description of an actual spiritual reality that is occurring in your life at this precise moment. The preparation is complete. The stripping has accomplished its work. The root system has been established. The hidden faithfulness has been recorded. The awakening has begun. And all of these things, each one a necessary precondition for the next, have been building toward this moment of positioning, this place where the chosen one who was prepared in secret stands ready to be deployed in the open. God is positioning you right now, not in some future season that you will have to wait another decade to enter now. The positioning is active, and it is deliberate, and it is moving with a divine efficiency that does not require your complete understanding in order to operate. You do not need to see the full blueprint. You do not need to comprehend every step of the plan. You need to be what you have been being made into through every single season of your journey. A person who trusts the hand of God even when they cannot trace it, who steps forward when the way is not fully lit, who says yes to the leading of the Spirit, even when yes feels like stepping off the edge of everything familiar. Abraham received a call to go to a land he would receive as an inheritance, and he went out, the scripture says in Hebrews chapter 11 verse 8, not knowing where he was going, not knowing. He did not have a map. He did not have a detailed itinerary. He had a word from God and a willingness to move, and those two things combined were sufficient to make him the father of faith for every generation that followed. Your assignment does not require you to have complete information. It requires you to have genuine obedience. It requires you to take the next step that the Spirit is indicating, even when the step beyond that is still hidden in the fog of the yet to be revealed. The clarity you are waiting for is not going to arrive all at once before you move. It arrives in the moving. The path becomes visible as the foot falls forward. The light illuminates as far as the next step, and then the step after. That and then the step after that, with a consistency and a faithfulness that will never leave you standing in the dark without enough light to do what you are being asked to do. You are standing at the threshold of your assignment. The waiting room is behind you. The door is in front of you, and the hand of God is on the handle, waiting for the alignment of the chosen one who has been prepared, who has been stripped, who has been awakened, who has been positioned, and who is now ready to step into the fullness of what they were made for. Not someday, not eventually, not when the circumstances look more favorable or the confirmation feels more certain or the fear feels more manageable. Now, today, in this moment, with everything you have been through behind you and everything heaven has prepared ahead of you, you are exactly where you need to be to take the step that changes everything. The threshold is not a place to linger. It is a place to cross. And you are ready to cross it. You are not the same person who started this message. Something shifted between the opening words and these ones, and you know it. Not because the words were particularly clever or because the delivery was especially polished, but because truth has a quality that is entirely its own, a quality that bypasses the analytical mind and lands directly in the spirit, producing a recognition that feels less like learning something new and more like remembering something ancient. What has been spoken over you in this message was not new information deposited into an empty space. It was a mirror held up to a reality that was already true about you, that has always been true about you, that will remain true about you regardless of whether you ever fully believe it or not. But believing it changes everything about how you live it. There's a difference between a chosen one who carries their calling unconsciously and one who carries it with full awareness. The unconscious carrier stumbles through their assignment, occasionally producing extraordinary fruit without understanding why, frequently undermining their own purpose through the internalized lies that were never challenged and replaced with truth. They are still chosen. The calling is still on their life. But so much of what heaven prepared them to release remains, locked inside a vessel that does not yet know its own value, does not yet understand its own strength, does not yet walk with the authority that belongs to someone who has looked their own identity in the face and said, "Yes, this is who I am. I receive it. I will walk in it. I will not shrink from it. I will not apologize for it. I will not allow the discomfort of others with the fullness of my calling to become a reason for me to make myself smaller than God made me." That is the declaration heaven is waiting to hear from you today, not the performance of confidence you do not feel, not the manufactured boldness of someone pretending they have it all together, but the genuine, grounded, settled declaration of a soul that has finally looked at the full weight of what God said about them and decided to agree with it, to come into alignment with heaven's perspective on their own life, and to begin moving through every remaining day of their existence from that place of settled, unshakable, heaven-confirmed identity. You are chosen. You have always been chosen. The enemy knew it. Heaven confirmed it. Your suffering shaped you for it. Your sensitivity equipped you for it. Your faithfulness in the hidden place prepared you for it. The stripping cleared the way for it. The awakening has activated it. The positioning has set the stage for it. And now the only remaining variable, the only piece that heaven is waiting on, is your full, conscious, deliberate agreement with the truth of who you are. Say it right now, even if only in the interior of your spirit. Say, I am chosen, I am covered, I am called, I am equipped, I am positioned, I am ready. Let those words land in every part of you that is still holding back, still hedging, still leaving a door open to the smaller story, in case the larger one turns out to be too good to be true. Close that door. You do not need it anymore. The smaller story was never yours. It was a lie you were handed by people and circumstances and a spiritual enemy that understood what would happen if you ever truly stepped into the fullness of what you are. What happens is this: you become what the book of Daniel chapter 12 verse 3 describes, those who are wise, who will shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Not for a moment, not for a season, forever. The impact of a life fully lived in alignment with its divine calling does not end with the life. It echoes across generations. It reaches into futures you will never personally witness. It multiplies in ways that the finite mind cannot calculate, producing fruit from seeds of obedience that were planted in obscurity and faith, and the long, unglamorous daily choosing of God over everything that competed with Him for the center of your life. Your life is an eternal investment, and the returns are just beginning to come in. Now consider the people who are waiting for you, not waiting in the abstract sense, not some faceless crowd of theoretical beneficiaries of your eventual obedience, but real people, specific people, some of whom you have already met and some of whom you have not yet encountered, who are carrying the exact weight that only your story, your voice, your presence, your experience, your particular combination of gifts and wounds and wisdom and compassion can speak to. There are people who will not be reached by anyone else's message because their hearts have been specifically prepared to receive the message that comes through you. There are doors that will only open when you knock on them. There are breakthroughs that are waiting on your obedience the way a key waits for the lock it was made for. You are not stepping into your assignment for yourself alone. You never were. The calling was never just about your fulfillment or your significance or even your healing, as real and as important as all of those things are. The calling is about the people on the other side of your yes, the ones who are still in the dark that your light was designed to interrupt, the ones who are still in the valley that your voice was equipped to speak life into, the ones who need to see that it is possible to survive what you survived and still stand, still shine, still serve, still love with a wholeness that suffering informed but never destroyed. They are waiting for you. And every day you spend doubting what heaven has already confirmed about your identity is a day they spend waiting a little longer. So step forward. Step into the clarity that this message has begun to produce. Step into the authority that your preparation has earned and your calling requires. Step into the fullness of a life that was never meant to be lived at the edges of your potential, carefully rationing the gift for fear of being too much or asking too much or expecting too much. You were made for the deep end. You were built for the weight of the significant. You were prepared, at great cost and over great time, for this exact moment and for every moment that follows it. And you will not walk it alone. The God who prepared you will accompany you. The Spirit that awakened you will guide you. The grace that covered you in every season of failure and fumbling and incomplete obedience will continue to cover you as you step forward with more intention and more authority and more genuine surrender than you have ever brought to any previous chapter of your life. This is not the end of the message. This is the beginning of the life the message was always pointing toward. Before we close today, I want to speak to you from the heart of this ministry for just a moment. Every word in this message was prepared with prayer, with genuine care for your spirit, and with a deep sense of responsibility to deliver what heaven placed on this channel for this community. This channel lost its YouTube monetization, but that did not stop the work, and it will not stop it, because this was never about the income. It was always about the ministry. Every video produced here is made entirely out of a calling to serve chosen ones like you, to reach the ones who are still waiting to hear that they are seen, that they are significant, and that their story is not over. If these messages have been a source of strength to you, if you have found in this community a voice that speaks to the depth of who you are, and if your heart is leading you to help keep this work alive, there is a donation link waiting for you in the description below and in the pinned comment. Every contribution, regardless of the amount, goes directly into sustaining this ministry and ensuring that these messages continue to reach every chosen one who needs them. It is entirely voluntary, given only from a place of genuine leading. And if this is not your season for financial giving, your presence here is more than enough. And your faithfulness to this community is a gift that this ministry receives with deep and genuine gratitude. If this message reached something real in your spirit today, like this video so that more chosen ones can find it. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they are not forgotten, that their suffering has a purpose, and that their spirit is far stronger than they realize. Subscribe if you have not already, so that every message that follows continues to find you at exactly the moment your spirit needs it. You came into this message one way. You are leaving it another. Carry what was spoken over you. Walk in it. Live from it. Let it be the new foundation of every step forward. You are chosen. You are covered. You are called. And you will never be the same after this moment.